Hey everyone, Comics and Culture here. Brian, actually. We're doing some underground comics today. The light is just horrible. If I turn on the overhead, we glare, so hopefully we can see it. This is Zap Comics number 0, which really came out second after number 1. The story I've read and heard a few times, which I believe is true, was that after they published the first Zap Comics, Robert Crumb told Don Donahue from Apex Novelties and his other friends that he had done another Zap Comics number 1, and it was supposed to be published by somebody else, and I forget the name. We'd have to look that up. I don't remember it on top of my head. And this gentleman who had the art sort of absconded. The money didn't come around, and something happened, and for whatever reason, the guy left with it, so he lost it. But luckily, Robert Crumb had been fortuitous enough to take photocopies back in those days before computers and all. He had photocopied everything. So he used the photocopies and redrew it, and that's why it was Zap 0, because technically it should have come out before the others. Now, this one's a first edition of that, 6.0 you can see, but the difference with this one is it was never trimmed. You see around, I'll try to not glare, it has the white border. Most of them, this border was trimmed off. CGC didn't note this. I don't know why. This was I bought it from an auction house, and they did note that that made it a variant. But CGC did not, for their own reasons. So, still very neat. If anyone's ever seen one, this one is bigger because, as I said, it has the white going all the way around. Next, we have Zap number 1. This is a first edition of Zap number 1. It's a 1.8. The inside actually looks pretty good. It's cream to off-white pages. This is a first edition. See if we can get that in there without this being horrible glare. It's a Charles Plymell edition. Still Apex Novelties. Don Donahue, his friend Charles Plymell, had the printer back then. He was a poet, either a beat poet or a beat author. So he had it, and see, you can tell it has it printed down there. The rest would say, I think the second says Don Donahue, and from then I don't think it says anything. This is the back. This one has a certificate of authenticity. It's actually a file copy, which is nice. It came from Don Donahue's Apex Novelties. The reason this file copy is so low is, I'll just read it, the whole story. Approximately 4,500 copies, this was the first copy, were printed by Charles Plymell on behalf of Robert Crumb and publisher Don Donahue. The comics were hand-assembled in the Crumb's apartment on Oak Street, San Francisco, California in February of 1968. This historically charred remnant survived the legendary Maori Opera House fire of '69, which destroyed 500 copies, which will only leave 4,000 total copies, which were distributed in the Haight-Ashbury section of California in the days of, where people might not have kept the comics 100%, let's say, when they're not in the right mind. The Dead, apparently, rumor has it, got this comic and read his trucking story and wrote the song Truckin' off of that. So I believe that is also a true story. But this is pretty cool. Now, a lot of these, the reason it says charred and all is a lot of the copies of this are actually just burned. This one just has some smoke damage, which is what brings it down to a 1.8, a good minus. But other than that, it's not actually charred or anything. You got all your corners, and as you can see, it's actually creamed off-white pages. We just have a rusted staple on the bottom. Other than that, really great shape. This is a Zap number 2. This is a second printing. It's a restored grade. It's an apparent 9.6. It wasn't slight restoration. It's just that somebody trimmed the cover. I don't know if the cover was all messed up or whatever, but they trimmed the cover so that even though it says it's a 9.6, we all know it's really probably, someone would only pay about half that because it's been trimmed. But it still looks great, presents great, and hey, what the heck. So it's a nice copy of that. Zap's Comics tells it like it is. Just trying to see, hopefully we're not getting too much of a glare. Next we have Big Ass Comics. Let's see if we get that off, if we lose the glare and still can see things pretty well. This is Big Ass Comics. This is Robert Crumb. This is a first edition. 71. This is also, see if we can see that, from the collection of Graham Nash. Now, he had a little band a couple people might have heard of with a guy named Crosby and another guy named Stills, and then once in a while they were with a guy named Young. But no, a lot of people don't know that Graham Nash was a big comic collector, UnderGround, and then his kids loved it, and they actually were lucky enough to have Graham Nash as a dad, so they bought a lot of the early original art to like Spider-Man and so forth, and a lot of this has been auctioned off. This one also has a certificate of authenticity, and that's signed by Graham Nash, which is in itself very cool. Seeing that I'm a big fan of Graham Nash. Next we have Black and White Comics, another Robert Crumb. And this one also cool enough is a Graham Nash. I was lucky enough to get in on an auction where it didn't seem like anybody was that interested in, number one, how nice these were, the condition, and the fact they were Graham Nash. You know, honestly. But this one's off-white pages. Sorry about the shadows. And then the stories on the back. Next, we have another really cool one. I'm only going to kind of come in some with this guy. He is a little graphic, so I don't want to, you know, I know kids watch sometimes with dads on this. This is Jizz Comics, enough said. This is also from the collection of Graham Nash. This is a 9.0, and it also has the distinction of being a double cover. You know, it's also just sort of about as far as we can go here. You have the Snoid in a position of, you know. And here we have the title. Like I said, we don't want to go too far. We have the woman dressed as a baby, and the rest just kind of gets out of hand, as you see. But that's pretty cool. It's a double cover. This we have Ghost Mother Comics. This had S. Clay Wilson and John Peck, Mad Peck. This was pretty cool. You had a sheet from the toilet paper roll of life. This is a little more rare, although not one that maybe everyone has to have. This is from Pirate Press, sorry, 1969. This is also Graham Nash. No certificate of authenticity on this one. If you look on the back, if you're a comic collector like me, pre-code, you'll recognize that's the Black Cat. So someone decided to draw her there. And then we see the media burn. What are you doing to protect yourself? Imagine if this was written today. This was 69. Now with all the news channels and everything, not that I'm against news, but just talk about media burn. This is Slow Death Funnies, number 1. This was Last Gasp. This is from April of 1970. And this is a whole group. We got Gilbert Shelton, Robert Crumb, Grimshaw, Evans, Tootin, Schreier, Hayes, Cobb, and Greg Irons cover. I love the cover. You know, you have Earth just basically eating everything in the universe. It's sort of an ecology cover. You know, way back. That was the whole Last Gasp idea. You know, very, very cool. This one was the highest rated. It's not like I check constantly or something. So if anyone knows or if they've checked the CGC listings, they'll have to tell me if it is still the highest rated or not. This was also belonged to Mr. Nash. I often think, like, how cool that must have been. Who probably, you know, flipped through this comic while they were hanging out with him. I'm assuming he hung out with some of the guys, like Crosby, Stills, or Neil Young. So that's why I was really surprised I had these. I didn't think that I'd even be able to afford them when I first saw them. This is one I've had a while. I have both of these. I have to CGC the other one. When I do, I will. This is Air Pirates number 2. It ended up being a 9.2. And I have a number 1 that might be a little lower, but I'm hoping it'll be a 9.0 or at least an 8.5. It really looked pretty good. This, you know, there's no reprints. All the other UnderGrounds, you never know, is it a first or a second or a third. Or there's ways to tell. It's just harder to tell. And this one, if you have it, you know it's a first printing because Walt Disney sued immediately. As it says, banned from future sales and any reprinting after court sided with Disney's lawsuit. This was Bobby Landon, Ted Richards, Greg Halgren, Dan O'Neill story and art with the Greg Halgren cover. You have Minnie and Mickey getting robbed, which doesn't look so bad from a distance, except you see that he's stolen their dope, which they spell out for you, D-O-P-E. And then on the back, we have, you can be sure it's disapproved. Teachers hate it, but the kids love it. Now, this was supposed to be for older kids, 18 and 19 even back then. It was the Northern California power failure. Very cool issue, though. I've had this one a while. Next, we have one from Ripoff Press from March of '72. I was just a few months old when this one came out. I was born in the early '70s. And this was Frank Stack with also some Gilbert Shelton art. It's a Frank Stack cover. Now, inside of this, it's also from Graham Nash, but inside it's inscribed to Jerry Wiest from Frank Stack, Fulbert Sturgeon, which is on the first page. Now, Jerry was just a big collector and a historian and an early EC fan, wrote the one of the greatest early EC fanzines and all that. He passed away just recently, and they've had some big auctions of his items. This one came from Graham Nash. Apparently, Jerry worked at Sotheby's, I believe, is the comic guy, and pretty much a lot of the places. Maybe it was Christie's, I forget. But he became friends with Mr. Nash whenever they were doing the auction of some of his kids' comics, I believe, when they were buying comics. Something they were both big collectors. So Jerry apparently gave this to him at some point. I learned this from a friend of Jerry's that I'm lucky enough to talk to and ask questions to sometime. And that's all I know about that, but that's why that's signed inside. But that's also a very cool comic. And also the Graham Nash, this one does have a COA there. I'll flip him around in just a second. Let me get the next one out. Feeling paranoid lately, buddy? You may as well forget about it, because the chief of secret police has a special dossier on you. And we've got your wires connected too. Nowadays they're on your phone, cellular. Now this is Feel Good Funnies number 2, which came out years later. This is actually 1984, so this came out 12 years later by the time that one came out. This is also Graham Nash. No inscription on this one. You have to love his art. Funny, but yet, the anatomy's really good. Got the little good girl art down there on the bottom, even for the underground. And on the back, Dorman Gamut dreams he becomes a bad movie actor in Jungle Bungle or The Revenge of Jane. It's only deserved Jane gets back once in a while, I suppose. Now we get this one. It's another little more obscure one here. This was Atlantis Distributors. Ever Wukawi, and I am not sure how to say it. I wish someone would tell me. But this was Atlantis Distributors 1973, also Graham Nash. This was Charlie Long, Dennis Harper, and Jay Galding art. Really kind of a funny cover. It's sort of it is a wraparound, not sort of a wraparound, except it doesn't actually wrap around, it's just continued on the back, I guess would be better. You got the gangsters here, he's got his little Tommy gun, also this has the COA, but he's got the little Tommy gun and all, and they're going to throw him in, he's got him tied to the anvil, and they throw him, splash, throw off the anvil, in it goes, and then he stands up, he's in very short water. So that's great luck. But then when you read the sign, you'll see that when high tide comes in, it's right about here. And he does have his mouth covered, so there's no calling for help down there. But it's one of those, oh no, oh yes, oh situations that I guess we all go through here and there. Excuse me. Almost done. Here we have Bijou Funnies. This is second printing. This has Robert Crumb, Skip Williamson, Jay Lynch cover and art. This is also Graham Nash collection. Excuse me. This is Bijou Publishing. Here we have Snappy Sammy. His handy hint #1. You could cut these out, of course, and put them on your wall if you needed to remember them. Don't wee-wee on your TV set. That is very true to this day. You probably want to remember that in life. That one is also Graham Nash, I believe, but without the COA. And then lastly, excuse me. We have Bijou #2, and this is also a second printing. The second one being smaller. I don't know if the first printing of the second was a bigger comic or if it was also small. I don't have that one. Curious. Also Skip Williamson, Robert Crumb. This also has Art Spiegelman and Jim Osborne. Art Spiegelman did Moss, the concentration camp, the whole graphic novel. That's amazing as well, at least I believe. Now this one is a little neat. This also belonged to Graham Nash, but this one is a variant. It's a manufacturing error, as you see. It was manufactured without magenta ink on the cover. This is from the collection. So if you see the original one, it would have had the magenta of the 4 colors. This one only has the other 3 colors. So the cover does look different. That's pretty neat. I forgot about that, actually. Sorry about this glare, everybody. If these come out horrible, I will have to redo them. I'm getting a new camera after the new year here. So, thanks for watching. I was going to do the funny animals, and I actually do have them out. Not even kidding. I'll do a little tease for next time. Here we have Tasty Freeze Comics #1. This one's a file copy. It's in great shape, except for this little defect on the cover where it was probably a top with the straps when they put them in the bundles, bundler strap. Other than that, you know, corners are great. The insides are great. You have Tasty Freeze Comics #1. Sorry, that's Harvey Publications. This came out 1957. And it's got the little Tasty Freeze. It has a little dot like on the cover. But what makes this guy special, some people might know, is it has this fellow before he got his own comic. So those die-hard Richie Rich collectors, if you want Ride 'em Cowboy, then you have to get this promo comic, which is Tasty Freeze #1. So that's it, everybody. It's New Year's Eve. We're going to go watch our duck drop in Havity Grace, where instead of a ball, they drop a giant lit-up duck with the year and then do a fireworks show. It's easier than driving into Baltimore, especially with small kids. We have a 9-year-old. So Happy New Year, everybody, and I will see you in New Year with another video. And thanks a lot for watching.